Intel might be in a little bit of trouble. Yeah, guys, there might be an issue with the entire line of 13th and 14th generation of Intel's CPUs. In this video, we're breaking down what the issue is, Intel's response, and how this issue might cost Intel a couple $1 billion. Now, if you're new here, hi, my name is Ed. This is All of Learning, a channel where I make videos about software security, cybersecurity, a bunch of other cool stuff. So if you're into that, or you wanted to hang out with me, hit that sub button. I really appreciate it. This whole story got started. The way that I got privy to it was I saw this article by Tom's Hardware that linked this press release by a company called Alderon Games. Now, Alderon Games is a games publisher that works on a multiplayer dinosaur survival game called Path of Titans. I actually have not played this one. I've only played The Isle, but these kind of games are pretty cool. Anyway, this game publisher says they've been encountering significant problems with Intel CPU stability. They've had things from end customers where their game telemetry is reporting an extremely high amount of crashes on 13th and 14th generation CPUs. Their game servers that are dedicated, that are hosted by another B2B entity, are experiencing constant crashes, taking the games down. And their development team, even in testing, has been having issues building and working on the game that cause solid state drive and RAM corruption. There have been issues across the board. Now, I want to say, first of all, to make this claim as a game publisher, the size of the cojones on this guy, Matt, is insurmountable by any other human being. To come out as a programmer and say, no, fuck this, this is the CPU's problem, is crazy. Now, what they've said, the reason that they know this is a CPU issue and not a issue related to their code, is that they've had decompression and memory tests unrelated to their game also fail. So they realized, okay, there was an issue, maybe it's our code, let's run some off the code benchmarks to see if the system is working. Over the last 3 or 4 months, we've observed the CPUs initially working well, and then deteriorating over time, eventually failing, which is weird. You would think that if there's an issue in the CPU, it'd be a one-time thing, it would immediately crash, but over time they began to fail. The failure rate we've observed from our own testing is nearly 100%. So over time of 3 to 4 months, 100% of 13th to 14th gen CPUs fails, indicating that it's only a matter of time before all affected CPUs will eventually fail. So this is huge news, right? This is a huge deal. This game company is making a claim that all of the CPUs that are 13th and 14th gen eventually will crash. And they're not the only ones. The developer for Fortnite, Rad, has become aware of a problem that can cause oodle data decompression, which is a decompression library used in Fortnite, failures or crashes in games built with Unreal. We believe that this is a hardware problem which affects primarily Intel 13.9K and 14.9K processors, less likely 13.7 and 14.7, but other related processors probably as well. The problem stems from this call here, decompress shader, which is a function inside of the Unreal Engine. And it looks like, however, this problem does not only affect oodle, this problem can also show up as a GPU error message, such as a spurious out of video memory, even though it is caused by the CPU. So one of the issues that the Alderon Games people saw, players were experiencing an out of memory issue even though they experienced sufficient memory. So this kind of just got shot into the ether, but no one really knew what to do with it. They're like, okay, so there's an issue in the Intel CPUs. What do you want me to do? So in a July 2024 press release, Thomas Hannaford, which is an employee from Intel on the Intel forums, said based on an extensive analysis of Intel Core 13th and 14th gen desktop processors returned to us due to instability issues, we've determined that elevated operating voltage is causing the instability issues in 13th and 14th gen processors. Our analysis of returned processors confirms that an elevated operating voltage is stemming from a microcode algorithm resulting in incorrect voltage requests to the processor. So this is where this article, this whole issue gets a little wild, right? So if you weren't aware of this, if you're new here, you're new to the world of CPU architecture, Intel assembly, the x86 language that runs the majority of the world, is an interpreted language. Let me say that again. The Intel architecture, when you run an assembly instruction, is not actually running that in hardware. That instruction goes down into the CPU and is decoded into a series of microcode operations, which is handled inside of a proprietary piece of code that Intel runs. Now, Intel will update this microcode to make the CPU as efficient as possible. And that makes sense, right? They want their hardware to do the correct thing. Well, it seems like there was an error in their microcode algorithm in the 13th and 14th gen that caused the CPU to request more voltage than it needs. And the issue with this is that CPU transistors are extremely small. They're on the order of nanometers large. So if you do things like request an additional volt of power more than you actually need, an additional volt of voltage more than you need, this can cause significant breakdown of the physical chemical layers of the substrates within the CPU. CPU. Now the first issue, obviously while bad, as every article indicated, could be patched by some kind of microcode update, right? The high voltage was caused by an algorithm issue, so they push a new update to the algorithm, and then the voltage goes down. It might be slightly damaged from the previous issue with the voltage, but you're all good. But then 2 days ago, Intel found another issue that relates to the 13th and 14th stability issues. Now, this press release was put out on Reddit. I think it's a little wacky that a company as big as Intel is putting out press releases, so sporadically, like you can't just go to intel.com and find this. I had to search for it and it popped up on Reddit. But also too, like making Reddit your place where you tell the world about your manufacturing issues feels a little weird. But there were people that were worried about the oxidation on the CPUs. So they say, short answer, we can confirm that there was an oxidation manufacturing issue addressed back in 2023, that only a small number of instability reports can be connected to the manufacturing issue. Now, small number of reports could mean small number of the pot of CPUs, but Intel produces like millions of CPUs every year in this generation, so how many thousands or hundreds of thousands are affected by this oxidation issue? A longer answer, we can confirm that oxidation manufacturing issue affected some early Intel Core 13th gen desktop processors. However, the issue is not root caused and addressed with manufacturing improvements in screens in 2023. We've also looked at it from instability reports on the 13th gen processors, and the analysis to date has determined that only a small amount has been issued. So basically, there is a microcode issue in the 13th and 14th gen. There is an oxidation issue in the 13th gen that goes back, they don't know how far, and may not be wholly addressed. To give a timeline here of what's been going on, there's been sort of a ping pong thing going on since December of 2022, where people have realized there was a problem somewhere and then blaming it on a particular party, and then them giving that blame back to somebody else and saying, nope, our hands are clean, like I don't know what you're talking about. So again, we had that out of memory issue, which sounds like an RTX NVIDIA issue, and this happened with a bunch of really huge AAA titles like Callisto Protocol and Hogwarts Legacy when that was big in 2023. And then a bunch of big names wrote articles on it, like Matt at Alderon Games, for example, to say, hey, this is a huge issue, so it got a lot of public attention. NVIDIA did their due diligence and dove into it and said like, hey, this is not in the GPU, this is another issue, it's probably within the CPU. And then Intel finally, after almost 2 years, decided to go ahead and make an investigation. And then once they figured out what the issue was, it wasn't just a microcode issue, it was an issue with the oxidation on the CPUs that could affect it in a way that can't be updated remotely. All the while this is going on, Intel is actively denying RMAs. One of the most public ones was that Intel denies an RMA on the Hardware Times editor who had already tried to RMA 2 CPUs which produce these instability issues. Now the RMA basically says, hey, you sold me a defective thing, here you go, I need you to give me a good one. Because prior to this, Intel was saying that motherboard manufacturers are the reason. They were shipping the motherboards with the CPU slot overclocked, causing that voltage issue. Now that Intel realizes that they're on the hook, are they the ones responsible for the RMA? Are they going to have to shill out millions of dollars to refund people or give them new CPUs? I don't know, really interesting stuff. It's an interesting world when your CPU has a physical flaw that causes your code not to run. I couldn't imagine working on a game dev team and my servers are crashing and I look at my code and I think, oh, surely the bug is in the code. It has to be there, and it ends up being the transistor is degrading because it's oxidized and overvolted. So that's it. If you like this video, do me a favor, hit like, hit subscribe, and then go check out this video over here about something that I think you'll enjoy just as much. See you there. Take care.